Okay, so I want to go over just the last part of section 4.1. And you may notice what you're looking at right now is actually the last page of the homework from 4.1, where you had to just factor completely. We're going to kind of skip around and just kind of do some more extra practice on this. So if you look at number 38, that's usually one that people ask about. On number 38, you can tell if you looked at the answers, these are the answers that you could have found on Canvas, and I'm sure you did. You can tell that the first step was we noticed that there was a common factor of x to the 1/2, right? Took that out. And so remember, in order to find the new exponents, like in order to find this 2, if I could write it 2, in order to find that the new exponent here is a 2, the idea was we started with 5/2, and then we factored out, that means we took out, the exponent we factored out was 1/2. So my new exponent is going to be 4/2 or 2. So that's where that 2 came from. We could have done the same thing. The reason this exponent right here is just a 1 is because we started with 3/2. We took out the 1/2, which leaves you with 2/2 or just 1. Okay, and then of course you can get that last term. So the first thing we did was common factor of 1/2, but then what we had left was this trinomial. And remember we said anytime you have 3 terms, you need to look and see if you can do trial and error. So from there, we got these 2 parentheses by doing trial and error. So in order to factor completely, not only did we have to do a common factor first, but then over here we had to do trial and error. So it might be that you're going to have different combinations of factoring in one problem. And basically, how do you know when you're done? Because you just keep factoring until you can't factor anymore. When you look at this, I have 3 factors, and no one individual factor can be broken down any further. None of them are difference of squares. None of them are 3 terms. None of them are cubes. There's nothing else I can do. Okay, so with that in mind, if you look at the next couple pages, it's actually in your notebook, but it's the first part of today's homework. The next page says factoring practice, and the majority of these are all ones that are going to require more than just one type of factoring. Since we just practiced that fractional exponent one, I want us to go to page 65, and let's look at number 15. Okay, let's look at number 15, and we'll practice that one together. So, first thing I always look for, no matter what, is common factor. And so on this one, I know I can take out some amount of x, but what's the smallest exponent amount? Well, the last term right here only has x to the first. So I'm going to take out an x. When I take out that x, what I'm going to have left is x to what power? Well, I started with 5/2. I took out an exponent of 1. That's going to leave me with what? Think of that 1 as like a 2 over 2. So that's going to leave me with 3/2. Plus, if I start with a 2 and I take out a 1, I'm just going to have x. And then the last term is just minus 2. So can I factor that any further? Well, I've never done trial and error with a fractional exponent. So on that one, I can't go any further. What about on 16? Okay, why don't you, if I were you, I would pause the video. First of all, see if you can get the common factor correctly. Okay, so just pause the video and see what you get. By the way, you guys, am I going to know if you pause? Of course not. But if you just copy down exactly what I do, you're not going to get good at these. And we're not going to use the fact that I'm not there as an excuse. So I strongly encourage you, pause it, try it by yourself, then start the video back up and get some extra help. Okay, hopefully you paused and you went ahead and took out a common factor. So what did you get for your common factor? I was thinking that we could just take out a common factor of x to the 1/2. And if we do, we're going to be left with x squared plus x plus 1. Hopefully we agree on that. So now I have to consider, all right, can I factor any further? Here's a trinomial, right? 3 terms. Normally I would just automatically, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Normally I would just automatically say, okay, bring down my 2 parentheses. Can I go any further? But I can tell right now that this isn't going to go any further. Just a quick look, because I know the signs would be the same. The only possibility here is x and x. The only possibility to get 1 is going to be 1 and 1. So in other words, I have no choice. This is the only way that I could possibly factor x squared plus x plus 1, but it doesn't work. Because when you check the outer and inner, you're going to get 1x plus 1x is 2x, and that's not what the middle term is here. So in this case, even though you might try, it's not going to factor any further. So in this case, that's all I could do. Sometimes you can't go any further. Sometimes you can. You just always have to do a quick check. Okay, so that was us kind of working with fractional exponents. Now I want to go back up to that homework page, your previous homework, and look at number 39. This is another one that people tend to ask about. When I look at 39, there are two big, ugly terms, two terms. And I hope what you noticed is this is our common factor. This is what we took out as a common factor. Each term had an x plus 1. The first term had 3 of them. The second term had 2 of them. So we could take out x plus 1 squared. And each term had an x plus 2. This one has 2 of them. This one has 3 of them. And so that's why we could take out a quantity squared on that. When we took that out of the first term, all we have left is that x plus 1. And when we took all of this out of the second term, all we had left is the x plus 2. And by the way, did you notice this is missing a parentheses right there? Okay, so that first step was doing the common factor, right? We took out two big ugly parentheses, so we did common factor. All right, but then before I can say I'm done, I need to kind of look and see what I have. So we did some simplifying on that second parenthesis, and if I distribute that minus, what I'm actually going to end up with here is the x's are going to cancel, and then 1 minus 2 is just negative 1. So even though I couldn't factor it any further, I could simplify it, because if all of this just equals negative 1, then I'll just put like a negative 1 out in front, and then what I have left is that other parenthesis. But again, we didn't just take out a common factor and leave it. We looked to see if we could simplify it and or maybe have to factor it further. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go down and look at, well, how about we start with number 14? Let's look at number 14. I see all the parentheses. When I look at number 14, I see two terms. This is all one term, and this is all one term. Okay, so what's common to both? Well, do you see that they both have a parenthesis of x minus 3? So we could take out an x minus 3. Okay, that's my common factor. If I take that out, what I have left in the first term here is not only a 2, but also an x minus 3. If I take the x minus 3 out of the second term, well, I should bring down that minus sign, sorry. I'm going to have a 5, but I'm also going to have an x plus 1. Okay, so far all I've done is common factor. Now I really need to simplify that second parenthesis to see if I should go any further. So let's do some simplifying over here. If I simplify this, I'm going to have 2x minus 6, distribute the negative 5, so minus 5x minus 5. So that means my first parenthesis over here is x minus 3. And this second one, 2x minus 5x, is negative 3x. Negative 6 and negative 5 is negative 11. So I can't factor any further. If I want, I could factor a negative out of that second parenthesis, but I mean, you can if you want to, but you don't have to. If it's just taking out a negative, I don't care if you do that or not. So what I actually have is this. So in this case, I was able to simplify it, but I wasn't able to factor it any further. Okay, so here's the situation where I would do what I talked about earlier. So why don't you go down to number 17, start with this. All of this is one term, all of this is one term. See if there's a common factor, and then once you get a common factor, see if you can go any further. And again, if I were you, I would encourage you to stop the video, try it by yourself without looking, see if you can do any amount of it by yourself. How'd you do? In this one, it seems like this was my common factor, so I took all of that out. And then once I took that out of both terms, I went ahead and simplified this second parenthesis, but when I simplified, it only came out to be an x plus 6, so there wasn't anything further I could do with it. So this is another situation where I could simplify it a little bit, but I couldn't go any further. So there's my final factored form. Okay, so let's go back up to that homework page, and let's look at number 36. When you first look at 36, hopefully you noticed there was a common factor of 2x. Even though there was 3 terms, you don't automatically jump into trial and error. You always do common factor first. So first we did common factor, and then with what was left, we did trial and error to get these 2 other parentheses. Okay, so first we did common factor, and then we did trial and error. Okay, so let's go down and see if we can find one that's going to have to require more than one kind of factoring. Let's say, how about number 3? Ooh, that looks like some ugly numbers, doesn't it? So let's start with number 3. So when I first look at it, is there a common factor? Well, let's see. I don't think there's a common factor between 30, 71, and 24. 30 and 24 there is, but not 71. So I think I'm just going to jump in and start factoring. So it's got some big ugly numbers. But remember, I'm not looking at that 71 till the very end. Okay, so I'm going to set up my parentheses. Because of that minus sign, I know I have one of each. Okay, to get 30, I'm going to start with 6x and 5x. And I'm going to go through the whole process that we talked about, because we always start with the smaller numbers. For 24, if I start with the smaller numbers, that would be 6 and 4. Can't do it because I can't put either 6 or 4 here. Let's see, then I would go to 8 and 3. Again, can't do it because I can't put 8 or 3 over here with the 6. I might go to 12 and 2. Can't do it because 12 or 2 both couldn't go with the 6. And then what about 24 and 1? Well, I could do 1 and 24. But you know what? I'm not even going to check it because just do a quick look. If I were to do outer and inner, 6 times 24, that's over 120. There's no way that's going to give me 71 in the middle. All right, so since 6 and 5, I've tried all options with 6 and 5. That means for 30, I'll go to 10 and 3. So 10 and 3. So I start back over on the 24. What about 6 and 4? Nope, can't put it there. 8 and 3. Let's see. I can't put the 8 here, but I could put the 3 here and the 8 here, right? Okay, so now we check it. On the outer, we're going to have negative 80. On the inner, we're going to have positive 9. That's going to work, right? Isn't it going to give me the negative 71? So in this case, I wasn't able to do more than one kind of factoring. All I was able to do was trial and error. But this is one that just looked like it was going to be really bad. But if you follow the process, really it was the second thing that I wrote down that worked. Okay? Let's see. What about, let's go down to number 7. That looks really ugly, doesn't it? Let's go down to number 7. So is there a common factor all the way across? I don't know. Well, for 35, the only thing I know of is 7 and 5. And that's not going to work on the other ones. So I don't see a number that's going to come out, but let's just see what happens with this one. 2 parentheses. In this case, they're the same because of the plus. What are the same of? Well, they're the same of minus. Okay. In order to multiply and get 48, I have lots of options, right? In order to multiply and get 35, I only got 2 choices, 7, 5, 35, and 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place that one first. I'm going to go ahead and place 7 and 5. Now, there's no guarantee that it is 7 and 5. I'll try all my options with 48, and if that doesn't work, then I'll switch. Okay, so for 48, let's see, the smallest ones would be, I believe, 6 and 8, right? 6 and 8. I don't know which one goes where, so I'm just going to throw it down randomly. 6x and 8x. And so I check it. On the outer, it's negative 30. On the inner, It's negative 56. That does not give me 82. But I don't want to just toss out 6 and 8. Maybe I just need to reverse it. Maybe I put the 6 over here and the 8 over here. All right, so now we check. On the outer, I have negative 40. And on the inner, I have negative 42. There it is. We have a winner. That's going to give me negative 82. So in this case, because I followed the options, it took me 2 tries to get there. If you don't follow the options, it could take you a whole lot more tries and a whole lot more frustration. Again, that won't go any further, but it was one that looked pretty intimidating. Oh, you know what? Sorry. Look what I messed up. In order to get x to the 4th, don't both of these have to be x squareds? Sorry about that, right? Because x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Does that change anything? Can I go any further? No, because I can't factor 8x squared minus 7, and I can't factor 6x squared minus 5, so I'm still done. Okay. What about, what can we do on number 8? I'm sorry, just looking at all my choices here. Yeah, look at number 8. All right, is there a common factor? Yeah, there is. What's my common factor? Let's see, I think I can take out 5 and also x squared. If I do that, what am I going to have left? 9x squared minus 4. Okay, so I just did common factor. Don't just call it done. Can I go any further? Well, look at that 9x squared minus 4. Isn't that a difference of squares? So the 9x squared minus 4, couldn't that turn into 3x plus 2 and 3x minus 2? So that turned into those 2 parentheses. Don't forget to bring the 5x squared down to be a part of your answer. So when it's factored completely, not only was there a common factor, but we also had difference of squares. So in this case, we had 2 different types of factoring. I'm looking for one more that might have. Let's do one of these that has 4 terms with the grouping. How about we look at number 13? Let's try number 13. Okay, when I look at number 13, yeah, there's 4 terms, which makes me think grouping. But before I do that, I still need to look for common factor all the way across, right? Is there a common factor all the way across before I even do grouping? There is. Couldn't I take an x out all the way across? So if I take out an x, I'm going to have 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x minus 9. Okay, so I just did common factor. Now, what's left in the parentheses is 4 terms. So I'm going to try grouping within the parentheses. So I'm looking at just this part. Okay, if I group the first 2, I could take out an x squared. That would leave me with 2x plus 3. Bring down the minus sign. 6x and 9, I can take out a 3. Now remember, because there's a minus out in front, I'm really taking out a negative 3. So take a negative 3 out of 6x, and that's going to leave me with 2x. If I take a negative 3 out of negative 9, that's going to leave me with positive 3. Is grouping going to work? It is, because those parentheses are the same, right? So I put the 2x plus 3 out in front, kind of like a common factor. And then what's left is the x squared minus 3. So that's what I get when I did grouping on the 4 term. Now don't forget, I still have that x out in front. Can I go any further? No. I can't factor 2x plus 3, and I can't factor x squared minus 3. So in this case, I was able to do a common factor, and then I was able to do a grouping. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you here is, it might be that it's just really ugly. No problem, follow the process, it works. Or it might be that you have to do more than one kind of thing. Maybe a common factor and a grouping like number 13 was. Or maybe it's a common factor and then it's just a simplify like number 14 was. Or if you go back to number 8, maybe it's a common factor and a difference of squares. Okay, so there's plenty of options. But if you follow that process where you always start with common factor and then you go from there, It shouldn't be too bad. So the first part of the homework is to finish these 2 pages, the 64 and 65. I've done several of them, okay? After you finish those 2 pages, the second part of the homework is just the first part of section 4.2. So you'll be watching the 4.2 part 1 video. 4.2 part 1 video, and then there's an assignment on Canvas that goes with that. So it's this that you can leave in hard copy. You don't have to submit this on Canvas. When I'm back in class, I'll check it, which is going to be the next class. But the one that you pull off of Canvas, the 4.2 part 1, go ahead and submit that on Canvas, and we'll grade that one that way. Hope that helps.